What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Robert Whittaker sends a warning to Khamzat Chimaev. On June 22nd, the UFC will host its first event in Saudi Arabia, headlined by a pivotal middleweight clash between former champion Robert Whittaker and streaking contender Khamzat Chimaev. While Chimaev has impressed throughout his time in the UFC and cemented himself as a two-division contender, the Reaper believes that when these two fight, he will bring a skill set that Chimaev simply isn't prepared to deal with. He spoke in an interview with ESPN Australia explaining,
"It's about going out there and pushing my game plan onto him and seeing how he adjusts to me, because I bring an arsenal of skill sets that he's not ready for, I believe. And I think the surest way to victory is to go in there, obviously not play to his strengths, which is not engaging in the wrestle, but not be afraid of it. I can wrestle with the best of it, and I've shown and proved that. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to fight my fight. I'm going to fight a stand-up fight. I'm going to see where it goes. I'm going to drag it out. It's a 5-round fight. I've been in plenty of those and I've got no quit in me. So let's see how this goes."
Currently, the MMA community seems to be rather divided in regards to who they think gets the job done, with Chimaev sitting as a -205 favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook compared to Whittaker's status as a +170 underdog. With Fight Night rapidly approaching, it'll be interesting to see how things play out, to say the least. Next up, let's take a look at Michael Chandler gets backlash for comments. Lightweight contender Michael Chandler and his wife are the proud parents of 2 sons, Hap and Ace. And according to the former Bellator MMA champ, regardless of the race of his sons, he and his wife are focused on raising them to be good-natured adults. While speaking on an episode of The Sean Ryan Show, Chandler opened up on parenting children with a different skin color.
"I'm not raising black children. I'm raising children. And whether you are black or you are white, no matter what race that you are, there are certain things about being a man and being a good man when it comes to character and integrity and safeguarding the helpless and sticking up for those who need it and being a good man of reputation. None of that has to do with skin color. Everything has to do with the character of the man." Probably not an answer that some people would say is important, but that's where the world has gone, where we think that the most important thing about us is our skin color or our gender or our political affiliation or all these different identity politics or the identities that we put on each other, when really we're just human beings on this earth. And there are certain things about being a good person that transcend skin color and age and sex and religion and all of those different things.
Although Chandler also indicated at another point in the interview that he and his wife have been reading up on the history of black culture to prepare for various talks with their kids as they get older, the comments have seemingly earned Chandler some criticism from the MMA community, with one fan writing, "White privilege is the luxury of pretending racism doesn't exist and teaching your black children this nonsense. You will teach them that their history and their people's accomplishments in the face of adversity mean nothing. They will be lost. All you had to do was adopt white kids." Another added, "Nope, even with your well intent, this is not the reality." As one member of the MMA community added, "Huge Michael Chandler MMA fan, but I think the first step here is indeed identifying that you are 100% raising black children. The second is that the world's perspective isn't yours. Whether you like it or not, there are things they will have to deal with. Even more so being adopted by 2 white parents." Another wrote, "Why even make it about being black when you're not black? White people always making it about race for some reason." One fan added, "Why not just adopt white boys? That way, you wouldn't have to do this. This is dangerous, and you thinking you doing something renowned is making you blind to the major icebergs you are placing in those boys' lives. For what?" Another wrote, "This dude is real delusional. No matter how much you raise them to be good men, they're going to be looked at as black boys, black men. Now, if they're black American boys, do you know the history in this country? Tell them about what happened to Tamir Rice." As one fan wrote, "This is one of the most shameful, outright disrespectful and outlandish things to do. There's absolutely no reason you should be adopting black children without being able to acknowledge the black experience. You are setting those boys up to have a hard time." As Big John McCarthy and Josh Thompson pointed out on their Weighing In podcast, however, the birth mother of Chandler's oldest son, Hap, specifically chose the UFC star and his wife to be her child adoptive parents, which many believe has to count for something. Next up, let's take a look at Daniel Cormier sends a message to Justin Gaethje. Although Justin Gaethje's recent loss to Max Holloway has put him outside of title contention, with streaking contender Arman Tsarukyan expected to get the next crack at the belt after Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier throw down at UFC 302, Daniel Cormier isn't ready to remove Gaethje from title contention at 155 pounds quite yet. During a recent episode of his Good Guy Bad Guy show with Chael Sonnen for ESPN, the Hall of Famer used Dustin Poirier as an example of how a fighter can reinsert themselves into the title picture with one good win after a loss.
Well, he said, I am always one great win from fighting for a belt. He goes out and knocks out Benoit Saint-Denis. Islam doesn't have an opponent. Bang, insert Dustin Poirier. It always works. And I believe that Justin Gaethje is in the same situation. Justin Gaethje is one win away from ultimately standing across the octagon from the champion because he's that popular, he's been that important, and all of the things that he's accomplished since he got to the UFC.
In the wake of his loss to Max Holloway, Gaethje indicated that he has no plans to retire. Despite that, he also revealed that he was going to be taking some time off from competing in order to give himself time to recover after such a vicious knockout loss. Next, let's take a look at Charles Oliveira fighting at welterweight next. At UFC 300, Charles Oliveira dropped a narrow decision loss to Arman Tsarukyan, putting the former champion just outside of title contention. While Oliveira revealed in the wake of the loss that the weight cut leading up to the fight went well, and he wants to return to action sooner rather than later, given that he emerged from the fight relatively unscathed, he recently revealed some surprising information while speaking in an interview with MMA Fighting. As the former champ explained, he's even open to competing at welterweight if the right opportunity presents itself. There's so much going on. Conor and Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier and Islam Makhachev, fights that are about to happen soon, so I don't want to rush things. I just fought, it was recent. I have no injuries, but everybody knows that a camp is a camp. I want to take it slow, no craziness, to do things the right way. Why not? Why not take a fight that will lead us to money and history and legacy? We have to think about it and talk to the organization. Why not move up in weight and do a big fight? A fight that makes sense and gives us money. Why not? While Oliveira also indicated that he would be open to a rematch with Justin Gaethje following the pair's respective UFC 300 losses, Gaethje's plan to take some time off following his knockout loss doesn't line up with Oliveira's plan to return to action sooner rather than later. With that in mind, it'll be interesting to see what the future holds for Do Bronx throughout the remainder of 2024. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at Daniel Cormier calls out Ilia Topuria for avoiding fights. In the wake of Max Holloway's stunning win over Justin Gaethje at UFC 300, the former featherweight champ declared his intentions to drop back down to featherweight in pursuit of a title fight with Ilia Topuria. Despite that, the featherweight champ has remained adamant that if Holloway wants to fight for his title, then he must put his BMF belt on the line. The way Daniel Cormier sees things, El Matador seems to be marching to the beat of his own drum, and not in a good way. As he explained in a video for his YouTube channel,
I don't know when looking at those rankings who would be next. Now, he's agreed to fight Max Holloway. He said he'll fight Max, but only if Max's BMF title is on the line too. He has to make a statement saying, this is what I want as the champ, and then put the ball in Max's court to deny it. But right now, it's not coming off great, because he's batting away all these guys with no clear idea of who else there is. It's just weird, right? Like he's not telling us what's next, but he's saying no to a lot of things that can be right now. And I don't know that you can do that as the champ.
While Holloway seems to be next up for a crack at the belt, the next generation of featherweight contenders has continued to impress, with many of the mindset that a rematch between Diego Lopez and Movsar Evloev could help add some new blood to the featherweight title picture. Next, let's take a look at UFC Fight Updates. Ahead of this weekend's UFC 301 pay-per-view card in Brazil, let's look at today's UFC Fight Updates, starting with an update to the UFC 302 card on June 1st. According to a post from Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, the fan favorite is out of his previously scheduled fight with Roman Dolidze as a result of a torn ligament in his hand. Hernandez took to Instagram to give fans an update on the situation, writing, "On Friday, while training, I sustained an injury. I got my MRI results back this morning, and unfortunately, due to a torn ligament in my hand, I will no longer be able to fight on June 1. I want to apologize to the UFC, my opponent, and the best matchmaker, Mick Maynard. But this was not an injury I could push through. I hope for a quick return and be back in the cage before summer ends. Thank you to all my fans, friends, and family for the continued support." So far, no word yet as to whether the UFC will look to find Dolidze a replacement opponent on the card or rebook the fight at a later date. Shifting gears and looking ahead at the UFC Vegas 93 card on June 15th, we have a flyweight showdown between Alex Perez and Tagir Ulanbekov. The pair had previously been booked to fight. However, Perez wound up fighting Mateus Nicolau on short notice this past Saturday. On the heels of a win, the UFC has now rebooked the previously scheduled bout between Perez and Ulanbekov. While Perez is fresh off a win over Nicolau, Ulanbekov will be looking to build on a two-fight win streak that most recently saw him defeat Cody Durden. Next, let's take a look at Ronda Rousey slammed for comments. Former women's bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey has been in the headlines quite a bit recently amid the release of her book, Our Fight. Recently, Rousey took aim at longtime commentator Joe Rogan and media members for turning on her in the later stages of her career. According to former Bellator and UFC commentator Jimmy Smith, not only does Rousey refuse to give credit to those who beat her fair and square, but she also had a reputation for treating UFC staff members behind the scenes poorly. As he explained on his Unlocking the Cage with Jimmy Smith show on SiriusXM,
everybody behind the scenes that had to put a mic on Ronda Rousey couldn't stand her. I said, why? They said she was a bitch to us from the moment she sat down to the moment she got up. Like it's our fault she has to do this interview to hype something in her next fight, and she's just miserable and she's mean to us and we can't stand her. They were cheering when she got knocked out. This is what I was told. Because those are the people you can be mean to and rude to, and they can't fight back. Those people couldn't stand Ronda Rousey. So don't sit here and tell me that you're the victim.
Despite his comments, others indicated that they had worked with Rousey behind the scenes and had good experiences with her, leaving many fans wanting more details about the situation. Dana White receives warning for UFC 301 in Brazil. UFC 301 in Brazil is set to happen on May 4th, but due to recent conflicts in Brazil, the US government sent a warning to people traveling there. The US government issued a level 2 travel advisory for Brazil a few months ago, warning its travelers to exercise increased caution while in Brazil. There's been an increase in crime and mass protests over the last few weeks in Rio. If you're a fan traveling to Brazil for the event, please make sure to be safe. Top comments. Nope, not a BMF unless you live that life. O'Malley and Topuria are great fighters, but not BMFs. Ian's voice makes my ears bleed. Any fighter who declines a fight because of the amount of followers on social media shouldn't fight outside of Invicta. Tom Aspinall is correct. Why not have an England evening fight and a daytime in America? Makes total sense.